Jon,
Hello.
photographer,
Yeah.
living and working in South Wales.
Yes.
And
Glad I'm not on camera today.
we're like twins. Scarves,
Yes,
spectacles.
yes.
However, I digress. You discovered a long lost photographer, and
Yes.
the project became known as CB4C.
Yeah.
Tell me something about that.
It's a very long time ago now, and it's ongoing on Facebook, but it's having a bit of a sabbatical at the moment, that project. I was doing up a art studio in the Heath about I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 years ago now. Came across a photo, which was two mod guys in the mod revival of the late 70s. An amazing photo, and then came across more and more, put them aside while we got the place up and running, and then once I realised what I'd got, that's when I went about doing the starting the project. Showed them to Photo Gallery firstly. They had no interest in doing anything with them, so I thought I will put some online. They were then picked up by a guy that worked on the Echo, I think it was. So a couple went in the Echo and in the Western Mail, I think. I can't remember quite rightly, or possibly just the Echo, and that's how it all started.
And the photographer who took
Keith S. Robertson. Yeah, so I knew his name from a sticker that was on the back of one of the pictures. To start off with, I didn't know his name at all, but after I'd put them all together and had a good look through, I managed to work out that, firstly, it's all by the same guy. Secondly, his name is Keith S. Robertson. And then it was a process of trying to find out who he was. So the people that used to run the building, various unpleasant things had happened to them, so it wasn't a case that we could easily contact them to find out why Keith had disappeared. So it was completely through the internet that the whole project kind of flourished, and continues to flourish on Facebook now. Without the internet, it would have nothing would have happened.
And are you still in contact with the photographer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I haven't seen him for a good while now, but he emails me every so often. He's quite a reclusive chap. He lives in Penarth with his partner. He had a stroke about 6 years ago, so he just doesn't like to be bothered particularly. But so
Was it a seminal moment for you as photographically, in the sense that you discovered this unknown photographer, and in what way did it spark your imagination?
I mean, for me, it was a pivotal point in my career, really, because up to that point, even though I still am a commercial photographer and do PR and whatever, if I have to, up to that point, I'd worked in a studio for 4 years doing purely commercial photography, which was just garage doors, TVs, washing machines, the anything that came in through the doors, basically. Then I worked for 4 years in a nightclub, so doing completely as far away from a studio setup as I could get, and that was a brilliant experience. And then, so really, it came at a point where, without realising, I was looking for something new to do, because I'd done the widest spectrum of photography you can get, really, which is from very posed, static objects that are lit within an inch of their lives, to being in a nightclub, reacting to real human beings, and then, trying to get a decent picture out of very drunk people for them to pick up at the end of the night, and all of that lifestyle that you get with that, which is going to work at 9:30 at night and coming back home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So to start work in the studio and to have a base there was a new thing. Obviously, I didn't plan to find the pictures in there,
Did you find the pictures and the negatives, or did they come later?
The negatives came later. They were just in a drawer in those old-fashioned folders that you used to get, like ring binders, that you can't hardly buy anywhere anymore, which is a bit annoying. They found later, and I found later in a plastic bag in the drawer, which was, I mean, the rooms of this studio, if you can imagine, were literally full to the door with rubbish. So it's not like going in a room and then there's just a chair in there, a table, and you just open the drawer and the pictures are there. You're talking about a room that you have to go piece by piece, like something from My Hoarder Next Door Neighbour or something like that, you know. So it was a case of I think we filled 4 skips with stuff. So it was a huge operation of man hours.
And CB4C became an exhibition.
Yeah.
It became a book.
Yeah.
That must have been quite exciting time.
It was really exciting, yeah. I mean, finding Keith's work gave me the voice to pursue the type of photography that I wanted to pursue, that I didn't feel, for some reason, ready to pursue before that, which is... and this was why I think Photo Gallery weren't interested, and this is why I know Photo Gallery weren't interested in the work in the first place, is because that kind of work is denigrated now, and it's seen as being overly kind of sentimental, and kind of, you know, it's not in colour, it's black and white seen as being old-fashioned now. But that discounts. I don't understand how you can have a photographer like Ian Berry or Chris Killip or Don McCullin, and they all work almost completely in black and white, but then you can, for some reason now, if you work in black and white, you're discounted as being old-fashioned.
Did it change Keith's life at all, the original?
Yeah, it put him back in touch with his daughter.
Wow.
Because he'd lost touch with one of his daughters, Nicola.
Good gracious.
So that came about purely through the project, because I put a picture up online of a baby in an incubator with a woman looking in, and it turned out that was Keith's daughter, which was really quite something. She just emailed me and said, "Oh, lovely photo, yeah, and I'm Keith's daughter." So yeah, that was amazing. I mean, the whole experience was absolutely amazing, and obviously Photo Gallery did me a massive favour by not being interested in the stuff in the first place.
Has any more stuff come to the surface, or has any more Keith's
of Keith?
Yeah.
No. I mean, that was the total of, because he was chucked out of the building and he was told that the photography was destroyed, which obviously it wasn't. So no, nothing more since then.
But the community has grown on Facebook.
Oh, the community on Facebook is massive now. It's I think it's got about 6,500 likes. So, and that's grown. That's in the last 4 months. Firstly, I set up a personal profile, which was about 2010, 2011 maybe. I can't remember which now. And then earlier this year, August, September time, I went to log in, couldn't log in. Someone has reported it as being a bogus account, even though it's obviously not a bogus account, just because it's called Cardiff Before Cardiff, not a name. So that was a massive palaver to get that reinstated, firstly, because there was so much information on all the pictures on there that I didn't want to lose that as an archive. So it was just really frustrating that someone had done that out of spite. I mean, that's the only... It's run for 4 years with no problems, and then suddenly Facebook have closed it down. Someone has reported that for some reason. And I didn't want to lose, like I said, I didn't want to lose all the information that was on there.
So, what will you do? I mean, I presume you are a caretaker of these negatives.
Yeah.
Will they eventually end up in an archive? Like,
I think they. I mean, that end point I haven't really thought about yet. I've been talking to Made in Cardiff, the new I want to say cable TV, but it's not cable TV. They want to do a 6-episode series on the photos and the story. So that's really exciting, and that's something that looking forward to doing next year.
Yeah. But you are a discoverer of lost material.
Yes. I don't know why.
Well, maybe you were born to be a discoverer of lost material. I mean, you've discovered stuff up in the Rhondda as well.
Yes, I think there's something in my nature that really enjoys rooting around, looking for stuff. And as a kid, I always enjoyed car boot sales, and as a family, we would go to I remember we went to this place where my stepdad's mother was a servant in the early 20th century called Ffoton House in the Cotswolds. This is, and I remember me and him. It was overgrown and not derelict, but I think there was only an old woman living there at that point. We didn't go in, but we went into the grounds, and I remember finding this Humber Imperial car in this garage that had collapsed on it. And I always have these find myself on these adventures where I kind of end up discovering something. And this was similar in Treorchy, that I was up there for a social history project with the Park and Dare Theatre, which is across the road from the library. Went in to ask about pictures of the Park and Dare. The lady in there was quite rude and said that she was sick of people coming and asking her for photos of the Park and Dare because she didn't have any. So I tried to charm her and tried to, spark a conversation. And then she said, "Oh, well, you might be interested in these. We've got in the back room." So I went through, and in there was 10 boxes of negatives.
10 boxes?
I'd say it was about 10, yeah.
Oh, what sort of film?
It was all 120, except I'd say it's 90% 120, and then the later pictures are 35mm. Obviously, the guy has given up on 120 and gone to the newer, even though it wasn't that new then, kind of camera system. So... yeah, that was a bit nuts. So it took a while to get them out of there because they weren't doing anything with them. And yeah, that was quite astounding to open the first box, and then inside the large cardboard boxes were smaller, Kodak sheet film boxes and sheet paper boxes, and inside those were the little greaseproof paper packets for negs, and then the top one was Enoch Powell, Merthyr Tydfil. And that was the first thing I saw. So straight away I thought...
So how many negs are we talking about?
Well, I think there's 18,000 single frames. There must easily be.
Good gracious, that will take you years to scan those and discover.
Yeah. I mean, that project's ongoing at the moment because I'm filming a documentary with the BBC about that. We've done 2 days shooting so far, and I've got another day on Friday. So it's been a bit kind of haphazard, the research. The research has been a bit nuts, but we're finding out... we've had to... It's a 30-minute documentary, so you've got to really zero in on what you want to show. So we've picked a handful of the most interesting frames. So we've got Enoch Powell. We've found a picture of Tom Jones somewhere, I can't think, it might be Ystrad with a lady who was a club singer who we've managed to identify and find to interview. And we found the barman that served Enoch Powell. We found there's a picture from a year after the disaster in Aberfan of a little boy and a little girl on a tricycle. So we found the little boy who still lives in the same street. We're going to do some stuff in Abercanid because Petula Clock was there. Oh, and some what do they call them? They call them gambos, which is a word I don't know. Like go-karts.
Yes, indeed.
In the Gurnos.
Oh, right.
So we found one of the guys in the picture, Carl. So,
and your intention with this body of work?
It's to... there's going to be a book, which is kind of taking a back seat at the moment because the documentary is so pressing now because it's got to be finished by the 30th of January, ready to show, ready to broadcast. So it's Yeah, I mean...
And here comes your food, John.
Hi, Heather.
Sorry, personal service.
Yes, please.
Everything for Jon Pountney.
Many thanks.
Well, look, we can share.
Oh,
It's okay, that's fine. It's a nice little...
Bloody starving. It's a nice break,
Do you
isn't it?
want salt and pepper?
I'd love some salt and pepper. Yes, please, Heather. If you...
Yeah.
So I've got here scrambled egg on brioche. The food is very nice. Really good brioche.
Was it?
Yes.
How are the eggs?
A little bit under seasoned for me, but I did have salt and pepper, so that's fine.
But you did moan that you didn't have a drink.
Yes, I would always prefer to have a drink with a meal. No, as in not a drink, just tea or something.
Tea or something.
Yeah.
You don't drink anyway, do you, John?
Not really, no.
No, you avoid the all alcohol.
Not if I can help it.
Discovering the negs in the library.
Mm-hmm.
Another fantastic thing, really, to happen as a photographer.
Oh, yeah.
And to discover other people's work, and to find out what people are doing and shooting in that year, in the sort of late 60s, I guess. Yes.
Yes.
And important documents, and I guess
Really important.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Because it fills holes, doesn't it,
Well,
in people's understanding of that era.
we're not sure now whether it's all just the work of one photographer,
Ah.
and the photographer was David Thickens. I think it's more than likely that it is the work of all one photographer, because I don't know why he'd have other photographers work in his loft from 40 years ago.
Yes.
Why he'd bother to keep that.
Yes.
I mean, the production team think there's a possibility there's someone else involved, because a lot of the neg packets have different handwriting on, but I presume that he's shooting film and giving it to someone else to process in the lab in
Yes.
wherever
that's the
you know,
logical
the papers. Yeah,
That's the logic.
I would have thought a press photographer then was out shooting a lot rather than processing a lot, because
They had labs to
yeah,
do the work for them.
they had people to do that, didn't they?
Exactly so.
So
How do you rate his work?
very highly. It's very different to Keith, in that he's more newsy, but that's obviously his job. It's interesting, and I've got a shot. I found a shot of his in the Merthyr Express, and I've also got the negative frame of it. So it's Enoch Powell in the Merthyr Con Club with two other guys, and the crop in the paper is just like, they've cropped it to death. Basically, it's just three heads. Mm-hmm. Whereas the wider shot is much more cinematic and much more interesting than what's in the paper, and tells so much more of a story about the relationship between these three guys.
Yes, but that's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you shoot press stuff,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
they're
yeah.
going to chop it a bit.
Yeah, the
and
picture
cut out
editor
people's
is
heads and
destroyed, and basically burnt out a lot of the background as well, which is quite weird. So the background is the wall of the con club, with this horrible 60s flock patterned wallpaper, but it's absolutely just, I don't know the word, wick with damp. It just looks like it's decaying, and it makes the building look derelict. So you just think, God, you know, some of these public spaces that you take for granted as being airy, cosy, homely spaces, in the 60s they were really rough, and this does tell a big story about how rough Merthyr was in that period.
But this leads me really, your work, you've done a whole body of work on the valleys.
Yes.
What was the attraction?
I love the valleys. I love the topography. I love the architecture. I love the people. It's just such a rich place to get into those.
Did you have anything specific in mind when you decided that you wanted to do a series on the valleys? Or
No.
a body of work on the
I
valleys?
just wanted to explore the valleys for myself and see what I found and take pictures of it, because I thought, as an English photographer living in Cardiff, I needed to get out and see what these places look like.
You say an English photographer living in Cardiff. Does an English photographer have a different outlook on, or the way he perceives things, other than I don't know, an American or a?
I don't know really. I mean, as a photographer, I didn't want to ignore what was around me, and when I've been to the valleys, I've always loved. I find it such a fascinating place. It as a series of vistas that open out in front of you.
But you're also a painter, John, aren't you?
Yeah, well, not so much now, but I started out painting. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Have you ever thought about
Yes.
combining the two disciplines?
I have, but I haven't found a way into it yet. Because I would only ever do it in a way that I thought was right, and I haven't found that.
And what's the end product going to be for the Valleys project, your Valleys project?
I have no idea.
Exhibition?
Maybe, yeah. More than likely a website. Because I was going to do it as a book, and then I just thought, these days, do a website, make a nicely designed, good, functioning website. So many more people are going to see it than see a book.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what I'll do with it. A book is a lovely thing, and I will never stop wanting to do photo books as a photographer, because I think the narrative you get through the pages is great. And even if you sell 5 copies, that's fine. But I think for the purposes of this project, I think it's just as creditable if it goes online somewhere.
That kind of brings us neatly as to a way that and what happens to photography in Wales and where it's shown, etc.
Yes.
You run a very successful photo fringe here in Cardiff, which is an exciting project in itself.
Yeah.
Bringing young people and photographers together.
Yeah.
How important is that to you, and how important do you think it is in the great scheme of things photographically here in Wales?
It's really important to me, otherwise I wouldn't do it, because I go out of my time through that to help other people to get their work shown, and that's something that Becky and I have done here with Milgie with Art in the Warehouse, which is how that started, which we thought that, there were people that were making work that we saw that wasn't available to a wider public, because there's no first rung on the ladder to show work in Cardiff, unless you're in a clique or club of a certain kind, of which there's many disparate ones that all kind of bitch about each other. You're not going to be able to show your work, and photo fringe is a similar thing. Unless you're a student in Caerleon, or less so in the atrium, or much less so in the atrium, you're not going to get your work shown anywhere. So, I mean, photo galleries show the work of those students. It seems to be just those students, so I don't know if there's some kind of deal between photo gallery and University of South Wales, is it?
Yes, it is now.
I mean, obviously, because there's photography students in Howard Gardens, as UWIC was. I'm not aware of any of those that went on to show in photo gallery at any point, and there's nowhere else. There is literally nowhere else to show. There's G39, that doesn't do photography at all. There's Third Floor Gallery, which does as far as I'm pretty much aware, almost never shown a Welsh photographer.
I think they've had. I think they've had.
Years, or?
Well, they show them, but they're rare.
Yes. I mean, that's what they do is fine. It's completely up to them. It's their remit. If they want to show international photographers, that's absolutely fine, and good luck to them. And they do an amazing job.
Yes.
But it seems absolutely bizarre that if you're in Wales and you're a photographer, then unless you do it yourself, you can't show your work anywhere.
Do you think then, with the success of Photo Fringe,
Yeah.
that there should be at least discussions about creating a gallery for photographers
Yes.
in Cardiff?
Yeah, from Wales.
From Wales.
Yes, but I can't see how that will happen. I mean, the opening night, we did a show recently in the Abacus. Becky Becky curated Art Hotel
Yes,
upstairs.
yes.
I did Photo Fringe
Yes,
downstairs.
that was
The
great.
opening night we had over 400 people in.
Indeed,
It
you
was
did.
absolutely rammed,
Yeah.
and I was really taken aback by the interest and the amount of people and the people there that I didn't know.
Right. So, in that respect, then, are you going to be holding these smaller
Yes.
events continually throughout a year?
Well,
or?
I started off thinking that it was going to be an annual thing, and I think now that I'd probably try and make it, when I've got time, more regular, a more regular thing,
Right.
because I think it just makes sense. I mean, originally, as you know, it came about because, firstly, Diffusion was May last year. When I heard that was happening, firstly, it was a surprise. Then when I saw the people that were involved, that was a surprise. And I thought there has got to be some kind of answer to this where Welsh photographers are included. And it doesn't have to be just Welsh photographers, because in the last Photo Fringe I showed one guy was from Spain, Jim Mortram's from Norfolk, but what are you doing if you're not showing Welsh photography?
Yeah.
And does that mean that all Welsh photography is shit? So, I just find it bizarre.
Well, I think one always needs an antidote to the establishment.
Of course,
anyway.
yeah.
And that's a healthy thing to have.
Yeah.
And
you need that discourse, and the response to it from the establishment has been absolute silence. Just an echoing empty silence,
which is very strange.
Yeah.
Because I think they should encourage fringe events.
Yeah.
Because
I'm amazed that they didn't have some hand in doing an official fringe, and that wasn't part of it in the first place.
Perhaps that would take the bite away from things.
Yes.
I guess, John.
But you would think that was something that they would look at, because if I don't know. I mean, there's so many festivals like this happen, and not just photography festivals. I mean, look at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah.
That is bigger than whatever it is that the Edinburgh Festival is, isn't it?
Yes,
now,
indeed. So next year there will be another Photo Fringe.
Yes, absolutely.
Running in conjunction with the Diffusion. Event.
And I don't have any problem with that happening.
No.
I don't know what the plans are for Diffusion. I know the theme is looking for America.
Maybe they should be looking for Wales.
I've started to put together a body of work which I will probably call Looking for America, because I just think, so what? I've been buying. I went onto eBay and I've been buying snapshots from the 60s and 70s from America,
Right.
and you can get some absolutely astounding stuff.
Yes.
Open casket funerals, amazing cars, these amazing vistas.
Well, but cars is one of your one of the other.
I do love cars, and I hate any car made in America after the mid-80s because they went really ugly, but 50s, 60s, 70s American cars look amazing. And photographically, and in terms of pop art, there's a whole timeline of art history that you're tapping into just by,
How important do you think, you're talking about art and art history, how important do you think, and what is the link for you with art and photography? Now, there's always this argument about photography being art, etc. But there must be a definite link between art as art, what people would conventionally know as art, and photography. Where do you see the link, John?
It doesn't worry me if photography is art or not. I think anything that's a creative output, visually, sculpture, video, is art. So I'm not sure why photography wouldn't be seen as art. I hate the phrase art photography, because you don't have art painting or art sculpture. I started off as a painter. I did art history as a module in my BA, so I've got a good knowledge of art history. A lot of my work is influenced by art history and history of photography. If you don't know history of photography, history of art, you've got to be a very gifted photographer to land feet first and take good photos. You must pick up an influence from somewhere.
Yeah, and composition is
Yeah,
important.
composition is a learned thing.
Yes.
I read a really interesting book about David Hockney doing a lot of experiments with photography in the early 80s, because his main problem with photography was that he didn't feel that there was you couldn't capture a sense of time passing in photography, whereas you could with painting, which I don't agree with for a start. But it was a very interesting book, and then that's when he started his combines, which were the photo collages of
Polaroid images.
moving through a situation, and that book is really interesting. And then it goes on to talk about the use of lenses with the Renaissance painters, camera obscura, stuff like that, with
and Vermeer and all these
yeah,
guys.
and what's his name, the not Canaletto, Caravaggio.
Caravaggio, yeah.
So that's a super interesting book, and that's a collection of interviews with Hockney by this guy in America. But that's all that stuff I suck up like a sponge.
Mentioned lenses.
Yes.
What sort of cameras do you use?
God, I really use anything I can get my hands on, and I don't mind. I mean, the beauty of 21st century life is great cameras of the past are now pennies on eBay. Pentax Spotmatics, Nikon Fs, I mean, they're still quite dear. Leicas are obviously still too expensive, but you can pick up yesteryear's brilliant camera for the camera I've got here in front of me, OM2 with a 50mm 1.4 lens, which I probably got for less than £100, which in the early 80s, you know, not many people were using those. Like Litchfield, David Bailey had one, didn't he, and people like that, but they were super expensive cameras. So I will pick and choose, and because of the nature of my photography, which is playing with ideas of not being able to pinpoint a time with the photo, I buy gear that I know will give a feel, which will, I can go out with that camera, say, put some Tri-X in it and get a picture, the feel of which will be very similar to something that was on the cover of the NME in 1980, because it's exactly the same equipment they were using, and that is the kind of ideas that I like to play with.
So film still important to you then?
Yes, very important. Yeah, I've got to work in darkroom. I've shot less film in the last... That's an absolute lie. I was going to say I've shot less film in the last 6 months than I have done for a while, and then I realised the project which I've just done that's in Barry Art Gallery, which is entirely shot on film, which was using my grandfather's Voigtlander, which was given to him by an Italian prisoner of war, to... I've been documenting the war memorials in the Vale. So that was shot entirely on film. And printed. So that was...
Do you have a favourite lens?
I do really like that 50mm on that OM2. If I'm using digital, on... I've still only got a D90 because I haven't really superseded it for my own use, but when I'm using a D800 that I borrow, the 85mm 1.8D Nikon lens on there I find hard to beat, really, for its feel. I've never seen the point of the 1.4 because I've tested them, and to my eyes then the 1.4 isn't any faster, really. So yeah, that's probably...
But you're a collector of cameras, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I sold off a lot this year because they weren't getting used. And next year I'll probably buy them all back again. Yeah, I got an entire Spotmatic range, which was the 2 black bodies, oh god, what was it? 28mm, 50mm, 135, 2.5. Bought them all. They looked amazing. Didn't actually really enjoy using them very much. So I sold them all again, which was a bit frustrating. But I use a EMYR press quite a lot. which is 6x9. I've got a Yashica 6x6 I'd like to use a lot. Just anything really that suits how I feel that day about what kind of pictures I want to take. And what kind... I mean, conceptually, the stuff that I'm not doing for specific projects, my own work, if I can define that as such, is the work that I like to do, which kind of confounds the idea of trying to find out when a picture was taken. I like a photograph that transcends 2014 or...
So what do you make then of people who would use all sorts of fancy plugins, etc.,
Yes.
with Photoshop? Do you approve or disapprove?
I don't know if I have an opinion on it really. I mean, I don't see it as cheating, but I am not a fan of... I mean, I will only really do with a computer what I could do in a darkroom, which is increase the contrast, change the exposure, or get the exposure right, and turn something into black and white. I mean, I started out... when I started photography, I wanted to be Nick Knight. Did a lot of fashion and product stuff that was very Photoshop heavy, and then kind of rediscovered a love for Don McCullin and Ian Berry, and because when you don't have those books around you, you kind of forget them. Because I went to college, all those books were there. Then you leave, you go to work in a studio, and the books that are there are like what's his name? The guy with one eye. Elgort, is it?
I don't know.
Elgort. His book is called Cyclops.
That sounds interesting, but I've never seen the
He's
book.
a photographer with one eye. I can't think of his bloody name. Not Arthur Elgort.
But I guess it's only
Super
one eye you
polished. Yeah. Super polished, super high end.
need. Right.
Like Herb Ritts, Nick Knight. Albert Watson. Albert Watson. But then I bought an FM2. And my friend said to me, "Oh, that's like the kind of thing that Don McCullin took to Vietnam." And I thought, bloody hell, Don McCullin. I haven't looked at his work for 4 or 5 years. Went and bought the book in Waterstones, and it changed my course completely. And
If you were, is there any era of photography that you would feel comfortable in, if you could sort of time shift
65 to
yourself?
75.
Okay. Yes.
Things look more interesting. Cars are more interesting shapes.
Do you think that's the case, or do we tend to, because I mean, I was brought up in the late 50s, early 60s, so kind of I have memories of that era, and I have some pictures that I took on a little Instamatic when I was 8 years old and stuff, and I still have those. The great thrill for me in those days was you would send your film, and it was all transparencies.
Yeah.
So I would send my film away, and I would wait. It would take a week
For it to come back.
and it would come back in that
Yes.
yellow box.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a great thrill.
Yeah.
So I suppose, I'd like to go back and photograph that era
Yes.
again, because there were interesting people around. But, when I've reached a stage now where I can walk up and down these streets, City Road and Cruise Road, and still find it fascinating.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
And in 40 years' time, that stuff...
Yes. Well,
know.
that's the problem I was trying to put my finger on with Keith's work, because I would use a similar camera. Well, it's the same focal length. He used a Leica with 35-50 and a 90mm, I think.
Yes.
I used the FM2 with 35-50 and an 85.
Yeah.
I used the same film that he used. I used the same paper that he used, but there was something intangible in his pictures that still made them look old. And that's what I would like to find out, is if I could take pictures in 1965, 75 without knowing that I was doing it, would the pictures have the look that Keith has somehow got in his It's that intangible
Yes,
thing.
it is intangible. You're quite.
And it's down to the hairstyles, the cut of the clothes, and the the end of the car that's coming into shot that's not just a modern blob that's just like just designed for aerodynamic efficiency, a car that's actually got a style to it. And it's all those things that interest me.
Future? Any plans?
Well, we've got to do the BBC thing by the 30th of January, like I mentioned. So that will be on TV probably by March or April, I would have thought. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm waiting to hear if I'm doing a big project in Llanrumney and Caira with the Cardiff story. I've got an interview about that tomorrow. So by the time people hear this, I will definitely know by then. So I'm quite excited about that because that's to do with two big council estates, and what I want to do is about people being pulled out of terraced communities, plonked in a council house.
Yeah, and that's an interesting place. Isn't it?
And then told, make the best of it. You've got no shops, no school, or you've got a massive school. You've got no church, no pub. You don't know any of your neighbours anymore. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to doing something with that.
And specifically with people then?
Yes.
And people in a place.
Go and interview. I'm hoping to go and interview people, make some moving image stuff, interviews, and I want to do something. I want to do some filmmaking that's maybe just set, bringing in a cortina or something, having a guy there that's just kind of washing his car or something and filming it and then having it as a kind of something that provokes conversation.
So will you be shooting that on film or on video? A bit of Super 8 there?
Well, the temptation is Super 8, and I've got a really nice Leica Super 8 camera. If for ease, I'll probably do it on the D800 because it's so easy to do. And it looks so nice because the Nikon lenses on that just for filmmaking just look
and
fantastic.
Working with depth of field. And things,
the 85, and I've got a 182.8, which just makes everything look so cinematic. It just blows me away that technology is available. It's so exciting that you can wow. Like the stuff I've had in my head since I was in college doing stuff on Betacam and SVHS. Now you can actually film something that looks like you want it to look, rather than have to film everything at the wrong end of the zoom all the time to try and get some depth of field into it. And then the other thing is the Cardiff Made stuff. So hopefully there'll be a 6-part documentary there, 23 minutes episodes, 23 minutes. So that would be really cool.
That would be cool. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. No, I'm genuinely excited about doing something that's a bit more off the wall because it's on Cardiff Made. I think it can be a bit more loose than the BBC one, which is...
So will you be directing, writing, performing in that?
Probably directing and writing it because they've got no budget, they've got no crew, so it's a case of they desperately need material. So it's something that I could almost make myself on the D800, give it to them to edit, and it's happy days. They're lovely people down there as well. That's something I think that if we can get that to happen would be really good fun.
And might be useful for the Photo Fringe.
Oh yeah,
as a way
yes.
of showing stuff
Yeah.
that's happening in Cardiff.
They've already interviewed me for Made in Roath was on there.
Yes.
And I was on the Made in Roath show because no one else wanted to do it. So I was talking about Made in Roath, just making stuff up, saying, "Oh yeah, it's there's loads of different venues," and so yeah, that was good. So that's I say that's it. That's quite a lot to be getting on with, really.
Indeed.
It's next year looks really exciting. So
good stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait to get Christmas and New Year out of the way.
John, are you seeing anybody young coming through? I mean, you're more in touch with the zeitgeist than I am because of age difference. Are you seeing people coming through?
I can't say that I am. There's a girl I know, Lauren Allen, who's in the course that I think we've both done talks to them in the atrium. she does some very good observational street stuff, and she's got an eye for composition. Otherwise, I think you probably, if you're up and coming, you're in the USW course in Killeen, aren't you? Which is, I don't know how I feel about that course, because I think it's almost like a production line of very similar photographers.
Yes.
And obviously they're all dealing in very similar subject matter, but it all seems to be, and we've had this conversation so many times, and photography has had this conversation so many times. It's people stood in the middle of a square frame, it's ginger children, it's
Car park.
It's a car park, it's a man sat on the end of his bed looking miserable, it's stuff on large format cameras for no apparent reason. I do hope there's more kids coming through somewhere, and to use a phrase that will make me sound really old-fashioned, but I don't mean it to sound old-fashioned, that have more of a punkish aesthetic to their work.
So in that,
I want to see a William Klein. I want to see
Yeah.
someone like that. I don't want to see 10 million people all doing really similar work.
So in that respect, then, Photo Fringe could be an important catalyst.
I hope so, yeah. Because I don't mind if the stuff is taken on a phone, if it's taken... I don't care what it's taken on.
As long as people are taking photographs.
Yeah, as long as people are taking pictures of something, and that is about their lives, and that's with their voice, because that's what I think when I look at a lot of the stuff that comes from Killeen. Technically, you're getting some masterful stuff, beautiful stuff, but it all looks the same to me.
And, yes.
And I find that, and I do find that worrying. But it's like, I remember when I went to for my interviews to get into university, and we talk in 1996, so it was the high point of like new British art and the YBAs and all this, and I stupidly went with a load of paintings to Goldsmith, and I got an interview, but they showed me around all the studios, and it was all just pickled cats, and it was basically just copying what the zeitgeist was. And I would worry if that was what was all that was coming out of university. You know, they might all be great photographers that are then going on to work very nicely in Sunday Times Magazine, Observer, Independent, blah blah blah, and that's fine, but where are the kind of ones that break the mould slightly?
And maybe one of the reasons why people don't stay in Wales as photographers is because there are very little outlets.
There's no outlets. There's absolutely none. Oh, I just kicked the mic. That was a terrible faux pas.
But you know,
there's nothing. There's no media. I mean, there's media, but it's got no appetite for decent photography.
Or media that doesn't want to pay you. And
Yeah.
Free.
I mean, I find it absolutely... it's infuriating that the Western Mail, Media Wales, they have no interest in... I'm not going to slag off the photographers that work there, but it would be nice to see something of a quality comparable, and I'm talking about the editorial in terms of the writing as well now. You don't see anything that's Sunday Times, Observer. It's just one voice.
It is one voice, yes. And they tend to be standard PR shots.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's used is just something that's sent out with a press pack.
Yes.
Or, I mean, where's the journalism? Where's the journalistic stories about poverty in Merthyr, or motorbike racing in some dirt track somewhere, or, you know, stuff that's...
But in a way, you see, because, and I'm with you 100% this, Stuart, because we are kind of not stuck, but because we admire the work that was done in the 60s and the 70s, and those kind of photographers, who were given time and the opportunity to do that sort of work. today, because of the fast nature of the media,
Yeah.
they don't have the time or the energy or the
No.
inclination, it seems,
No.
to want to do that sort of work.
to produce a quality product.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no cultural magazine. I mean, the best kind of listings magazine you've got is Buzz,
Yes.
who don't pay, and
No.
so I mean, it's
Quite depressing.
yeah, for a country, a nation, there is no. I mean, it's almost like America in that there's no integrated national media. There's just little odds and sods around the coast. Almost, there's almost nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
Cardiff media kind of plays at being a big boy, but
It's not.
not at all. No.
No.
And-
Yeah, it's an interesting area to discuss, really.
Yeah.
And I think maybe with what we are intending to do, with
Yeah.
creating this kind of hub
Yeah.
and linking people together,
Yeah.
might be, might create interest, because
Yeah.
we want to talk to young photographers.
Yeah.
There's no harm in it at all, and see
No.
where they're coming from.
No,
you know?
exactly.
And because it was quite interesting going to the one the arcade one you did, not the arcade one, the last exhibition where you had the bands and everything down in on Wood Street there.
Yeah.
It was really an interesting way, and you see
Yeah.
the zines that people are creating, and it's fab,
There is stuff out there, but it
Yeah.
doesn't get picked up by.
No,
It doesn't go further than that because there's no interest in the media.
no.
Because the media is so inwardly looking on itself, and everything's got to have a Welsh angle.
Yes.
It's got to be, the best pumpkin in Wales, or the best toadstool in Wales, or the best cat in Wales, or Catherine Zeta-Jones's breakfast, or
Yeah.
it's like, come on, we can do better than this as a country.
Yes, indeed.
Not everything it has to be self-referential, does it?
Excellent.
Yes.
I enjoyed that conversation very
Good.
much, John.
Good, I'm glad.
Superb.